Hello, my name is Lauren Liu, and I will be presenting on search engines and the persistence of misinformation. So, through this presentation, I will give my problem statement, my research question, my methods of investigation, giving a little bit of background, and results, and then the discussion and reflection, and then my citations. So, what I will discuss in this presentation, I will be addressing search engine algorithms and how these algorithms can have bias and personalization features that will contribute to the spread of biased info and also misinformation. And the misinformation that I'll be talking about is mainly focused on political misinformation. And my presentation touches on the topics of evaluating information tools and ethics and literacy of information tools. I will be discussing again algorithms, algorithm bias, personalization, misinformation, and some examples of how the misinformation can be spread due to these aspects of the algorithm. And overall, just want to raise awareness of how there are differences of algorithms between different search engines and how this could also potentially further spread misinformation. So, what is the problem? There are many search engines out there, and they all have different algorithms. And from these different algorithms, we yield different results from them. And from these algorithms, none of them are perfectly unbiased. There's going to be some bias at some capacity. And it's also thought that the personalization part of the algorithms more so try to encourage clicks rather than sharing true information. And there are search algorithms that may promote less accurate information if there are data voids where it's like there's a lack of information, especially if there's not enough reliable sources out there. And also, this could also cause search engine users to receive false and biased information and further contributing to the polarization of what is real versus fake online. So my research question was, in what ways does the algorithm in search engines like Google encourage the spread of misinformation? So, a little bit about search engine algorithms. What is an algorithm? For search engines, it's basically like a formula that is used to retrieve specific information found within a data structure and also tries to measure the significance of the content that is being found. There isn't just one definition of an algorithm, but this one fits pretty well with search engines. And then for search engines, they all have different algorithms. And I looked into it a little bit and found a study where they were looking at Google, Bing, YouTube, and there were noticeable differences between the relevancy and the time for different searches. They had these different searches for these specific search queries like information, nature, algorithm, physics, dragon, and all of them had different uh, times that it took for it to retrieve the information, and they also measured the level of relevancy for the searches that was found. So you can already see how different search engines can operate differently depending on what you are trying to look at. So then we also have algorithm bias and personalization. Algorithm bias, the definition given by IBM is that it occurs in systematic errors in machine learning algorithms and produce unfair or discriminatory outcomes, and it can often reflect or reinforce existing socioeconomic, racial, or gender biases. And what can cause it be many reasons, but it can ultimately there are probably programming decisions from whoever designs the algorithm that can cause unintentional bias. And then algorithms in themselves can take past user input data and kind of skew the algorithm in that way. They adjust to what users input the most, which can result to more biased outcomes without realizing. And then for personalization, it's when algorithms again adjust and cater to users that try to get users to click on that source of information. And these two, personalization and bias, relate pretty closely, as the effects of algorithm bias can be amplified from personalization of search engines. So I looked into some studies investigating how personalization and bias affect political information retrieval. And for this one, um, they were investigating how personalization can cause the filter bubble effect, which is basically causing users to see more of one political side rather than getting a whole encompassed view of a political event. So they found that for Google, more than like 25% of the participants had results that were more politically biased. However, it didn't show enough clear evidence for personalization and political bias. There wasn't enough to be like, oh, that the users had like actual bias of political information that was retrieved. But it was also found for the search engine DuckDuckGo that claims that users that type the same query should get the same results, but it was actually not the case. It actually varied a little bit in results, and it was found to be a little less reliable. And they say for DuckDuckGo that they don't have political biases from search results, but it was found that over 67% of the results from the queries were in some way politically biased. And these are just some of the examples of the different participants that were part of the study, what their search result page looked like. And again, they claim that it's supposed to be you put in the identical search query and it should come with the identical information, but it still doesn't. The one on the left is more left-leaning, the one on the right is more right-leaning. So it's interesting to see how um, even when a search engine claims that it is supposed to be more neutral, it can bring up more of a biased or skewed page of like, especially regarding political information. And then for this one, it was found that the logged in Google users have more personalization with autocomplete search compared to those who are not, which is important to think about. And certain root queries used like Trump, Russia, or Mike Pence, it actually varied more between the standard search versus incognito. And this is important to note because the more difference between the standard search versus incognito showed more levels of personalization difference, which means that certain topics can result in more personalized filtering compared to other topics. So this again can potentially lead to more biased views and potentially also lead to certain sites being amplified for misleading information or misinformation in general. So, how do these different aspects of the algorithm relate to misinformation? Well, misinformation is pretty much the false or inaccurate information that isn't meant to intentionally mislead or harm, but it can be done with incorrect facts, misleading information, or rumors. So connecting that to bias and personalization, personalization again can lead to certain searches that bring up misleading sources. And then again, with the filter bubble effect, when one opinion is amplified, it can lead to certain sources that can mislead a side. It's amplifying one side only. So then only this certain perspective is being amplified, and that can result in the possibility of only getting one perspective and be a little misleading. And then bias in the algorithms can also have the same effect and can be amplified by personalization. And I also looked at another study that measured how frequently the different search engines used a certain source, especially for this case, it was for COVID-19 information. And we see for Google being DuckDuckGo, Yandex, Yahoo, and Baidu, all of them have different levels of search engine sources or information sources that they tend to lean towards in some way or prioritize. And knowing that they prioritize these different types of sources highlights not only the algorithm differences, but the possibility of some search engines spreading more misinformation than others. And you may be thinking, why is that? Certain source types like social media, infotainment, and possibly alternative media may be less reliable just because social media, again, it's not like an actual news source. It is more so many people may do journalism on there, but sometimes people will input their own opinion because oftentimes social media, it is just user based. It is regular people talking, right? So again, if there certain sites are promoting this a little bit more, there is possibly more of a higher chance of some misleading or misinformation being put out there more compared to other search engines. So in a particular study also, um, they were talking about how Google had a significant enough role in spreading misinformation prior to the 2016 election, and they were actually finding how there were many fake sites that appeared in the Google search because they used SEO. So they were able to be included in the algorithm, and they basically exploited the weakness of the search algorithm. And they basically manipulated the algorithm using keyword stuffing, link farms, and Google bombing that allowed the articles to be ranked high enough to be seen. And then they also gained more traction, meaning that there was more of a chance of appearing on the search page and inadvertently caused more algorithm bias that promoted skewed sources on the search engine result pages. So, from all this, we have explored and found that search engine algorithm shapes what information is seen by users. Personalization and biases have a level of influence on political searches and can introduce the problem of filter bubbles and potentially misleading people. And then there's enough evidence of measurable personalization from studies, especially logged-in users, which again can be important to note if there is more of a lean or bias towards a certain side. And then different search engines prioritize different source types, which can again possibly lead to some engines showing less reliable sources. And then Google having a role in spreading fake news. Um, by algorithm manipulation and then furthering algorithm bias too. And why all this matters ultimately, there needs to be awareness of how search engines can be different from each other when receiving information. So you have enough of a discernment of what would work best for you. And then we need more digital literacy and awareness of what is true information, how to realize what is true information. And then ultimately know that information always gets filtered. Um, and sometimes you just have to be careful about what is the truth. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Here are my sources. Um, I hope you learned something.